To start off the program, I'd like to invite Alfred Madian, a percussionist, musical historian, and culture innovator, and he will bring the audience through the history of Gnawa music, sharing the heritage of the musical and spiritual traditions associated with Gnawa, and the journey of this music to the Americas by enslaved West Africans and how the music both anchored and lifted them. Alfred?
I'm just going to talk in general about the musical roots of Gnawa, and also see how they are also the musical roots of much of what is music in our modern world as they manifested in America. So the similarities go back to, go to the next slide. The similarities and the roots of the music go back to the 16th century. In the 1500s, there were two, major routes in which the enslavement went to the Americas on the one hand, but also there was an enslavement that took place from sub-Saharan Africa into Morocco. And it's a different type of enslavement, as you probably know. The slaves that were taken to Morocco were to serve as the special military guard for the king. And they had much different freedoms, or there weren't much freedoms in the Americas, but they had certain freedoms that they were allowed to practice and so on. They didn't remain in slavery for too long, but nonetheless it became its own community within the Moroccan community. And one of the things, although originally in both enslavements there were Muslims and non-Muslims, the group that was in Morocco will form their community of people also based on a religious connection. And that religious connection, of course, was Islam, but also through a certain Sufi direction of Islam. And so they looked at the first muezzin of Islam that the Prophet had commissioned to do the adhan, Bilal, who was he was from Africa, and as their saint, as their patron saint. And so the ceremonies are centered around that and so on. So this group became known as the Gnawas, and their ceremonies and so on as Gnawa ceremonies. I'm probably skipping around from here. And so, the similarities are of Gnawa music and it ends up manifesting, of course, in the States. We had one thing also that there was a major difference between the slaves taken by the Portuguese and the Spanish and the slaves that were taken by the British, is that the Portuguese and the Spanish allowed the slaves to bring things with them. And so one of the things that was mainly brought was drums, actually. And so that's why in Latin music you have so much more of a drumming tradition in Cuban, Brazilian music and so on. And but for the North, the slaves that the British brought, what they brought with them was actually what was in their head. So of course, one of the things is the blues scales came directly from scales in Africa, and if you listen to the blues, travel throughout West Africa, and you'll hear plenty of it there. And eventually, if you look at really the history of all of music as it came to be in the Americas, Fats Domino combined blues singing with the styles of Western music to create what's called rock and roll. That's where the name and music comes from. And then you had the whole idea of call and response, which is usually in the here to the black churches and the gospel and so on. And that was taken by Ray Charles and kind of created soul music out of that and so on. And the interaction, did go back and forth. James Brown took the idea of the constant guitar riff, which was kind of a main role in funk music, and he took that from African musicians, and he added in '67 he came up with this amazing sound called funk, which is the ancestor to disco and to hip hop. And in turn, there was a Nigerian artist who was influenced by this new funk sound from James Brown, by the name of Fela Kuti, and he took the sound that James Brown made, along with jazz and so on, and the local music from the area, and created a new kind of music altogether called Afrobeat. If you're familiar. If you're not familiar with the work of Fela Kuti, listen. And of course, these are the same factors that play into Gnawa music, the call and response factor, the bluesy sound. And one of the other main things, of course, one of the instruments that becomes created out of the population of the slaves that were brought here was the banjo. And the reason the banjo played a big role also in early blues. And most of the West African instruments, if you're familiar, usually have a leather front. A Sufi ceremony is sunset, and will go on until sunrise. And the idea is it's a ceremony of healing, and so one of the processes that they do is they take you through these different stages of yourself. So I hope one day you'll all get to attend the Leila ceremony. It's an amazing experience. And so they take you through colors which all have different meanings to your senses and so on. I wanted to also let you know about sort of the different Sufi groups maybe a little bit, and different relationships they have to music. So some of them will think that music is okay for musical interpretation or ways to connect to God. But some are very strict about the way it should be done, in the sense that there should be no musical instruments whatsoever. It should be only the human voice and the breathing. So the Shadili are one of the largest groups of Sufis, and they're found in different areas. But in Syria, for example, they differentiate with that, and they allow frame drums and bamboo flutes. And that's usually what you see mostly in common in most of the Sufi groups. The Qadriya only allowed the frame drum. Usually it's the frame drum, the metal drums, that is used for spiritual purposes or spiritual healing. And so just because you'll find that even throughout the world, even the shaman among the Native American communities, a lot of times will use a similar type of drum. So these are just some different ways. The Mawlawi probably are the ones that you're most familiar with. They have the Royal Dervishes from Turkey. And so they allow musical instrumentation, but the emphasis is only on the name. So the Sulaimiyya emphasis on the drum, and so on and so on. So there's different tariqas. But you'll find each tariqa, really, music plays a very important role for them, and they're very strict about the boundaries of where it should go. But so, since Morocco was kind of outside of what was the Islamic Empire at the time, because they were not taken over by the Ottomans, there was a little bit of a variation as far as that. So that's why the Gnawas were able to also kind of use their own instrumentation and so on in the Sufi ceremonies. So yeah, the idea is to take you in the ceremony through different colors, and these are the different colors and the symbolism that they connect to. So the first part of the ceremony, they take you through the color white, and to bring about peace and the connection of death to peace, and the idea of the surrender of the self and finding happiness through the surrender of the self. The next color is black, and it's to go sort of inward, that you're looking at your feelings and your senses, and relate that to your observation, the observation of the mystery of life. the paradox. The next one would be the light blue, and it's a stage in which to elevate to the sky, and feeling the calming of the self as you do that, the senses. Then it would be red, bringing sweetness to the ceremony, and seeing that sweetness sort of unfold into a rage to take it back to sweetness. Then dark blue, and you fall back into the depth of the ocean and become the fluidity of the water, so you're able to feel everything around you. And then green, the growth of healing within the self, leading to hope, renewal, and the freeing of the self. And the last is saffron, or yellow. And it's the joy of sunshine. As the sun rises, this is the stage that we go to the ceremony. And the energy of laughter and the rise out of darkness. So the Gnawa, usually maintain their own communities and so on, but the music could not be held back, and it permeated throughout Moroccan society, and also made it to the ears of many jazz musicians in the States, who ended up going there and actually performing with them, and or some recordings of that. It's good. Can we go to the next slide? That's an album with Trevor Sanders, the jazz musician. And in the 70s, a movement also happened in Morocco, in which a group of young people took Gnawa, some of them were from the community, and incorporated it more into a sound that was popular for everybody. And so Gnawa music has grown in Morocco in a tremendous way. And I think what hopefully we'll see happening is that as more musicians from the West hear of it, that these two forces that have the similar lineage and background will come back together and grow further that way.